Good morning, and welcome to our Sunday worship service. My wife, Linda, and I have been very fortunate with the generous people in our lives, especially her parents, Linda's mom, Lois, and dad, Robert, were residents of Moscow for some 30-odd years before they both passed. And we were blessed to be able to come and help them, and their generosity enabled us to have a home. And for that, we are always grateful. So there are many other examples of generosity, not only communities of place, but also communities of practice and communities of interest. And all those have enriched our lives, and to which we try to give back where we can. I'd like to extend a special welcome to all those who are joining us for the first time. We are very glad that you are here. If you've come in person, you should have received a welcome packet with an information card in it. If you fill that out and drop it in the offering basket, we will be in touch to support you in finding your way into our community. If you are joining us online, there's a link on our website to an electronic version of that same card. Our welcoming committee members have yellow name tags here in the congregation and can answer questions or point you toward additional information. Whether you are new or not, please consider staying for coffee and conversation after the service, either downstairs, in our fellowship hall, or in our Zoom room. And now, let's say our words of welcome together. Whether this is your first or your 1000th Sunday with us, and whether you strolled, rolled, zoomed, ran, or danced in, we are glad you chose to join us. We are one people of many beliefs, identities, origins, sexualities, and genders. All are welcome here. Now we will take a moment to say hello across the technical divide. First, we're going to show you the people joining us on Zoom. If you're at home, please turn on your camera now and then wave. Thank you. Now, people who are attending the service in our building, it's your turn to wave. Lots of happy hands. We do have a couple announcements. November is the month when we ask people to pledge their financial support for the coming year so that we can put together an operating budget. You should have received a mailing with materials to support your pledging process this coming week. Please let us know if you don't or didn't. Meanwhile, all this month, a member of the stewardship team will host a table in the fellowship hall following the service where you can trade a pledge card for a chocolate truffle. Yum. As usual, the goal is not to give until it hurts, but to give until it feels good, knowing that our ministry is a vital and necessary one here on the Palouse. Know, too, that your support, at whatever level feels good and right to you, matters. None of us could keep the ship afloat on our own. It takes all of us, each doing our part. Here end the announcements. We preface our service by acknowledging our church was built on the ancestral homelands of the Nimibu, called Nez Perce by the French-speaking traders, the Palouse, and the Shizums, called the Koule. Let us pause and remember that we live on ground that is sacred, ground that was stolen, ground that cries out for justice and for responsible stewardship. May our remembering help us find the courage to do our part to restore wholeness to the earth and all her peoples. We are hoping that folks joining us via Zoom have a chalice or a candle to light and something to light it with. Let's light our candles together. Thank you, Margaret. That works. Thank you.
So before we do the chalice, Margaret
birthday to you. Wow. That was a lot more fun than this. Okay, shall we read the words? In the light of truth and the warmth of love, we gather to seek and seek to share.
Good morning, everyone. I am the Reverend Dr. Elizabeth Stevens, and I am lucky enough to serve this congregation as its minister. So I wonder, have you noticed the banners on the wall? So we have the first two permanent banners made. Aren't they beautiful? And we're going to be working through eventually. They will all be those beautifully quilted. Now, who remembers what they are and why they are there? Martha does. So we Unitarian Universalists don't have a creed. So we don't recite a creed. We don't have a statement of shared beliefs. What we do have is a statement of shared values. And we actually put that statement in our bylaws. Article 2 of the bylaws of the Unitarian Universalist Association, to be exact. We may be the only faith that essentially uses its bylaws as a holding place for what's essentially scripture. In any event, we are also a faith that evolves and changes over time. So we commit to examine our shared values and re-articulate them every so often. And we're in the midst of that process right now. The proposed changes to Article 2 lift up these 7 words as our core values. So transformation, generosity, equity, justice, interdependence, and pluralism, with love always at the center. So here at the UUCP, we took these 7 values as our themes for reflection for the whole year, and this month we're reflecting together on generosity. This is the language around generosity in the bylaws in Article 2 of the Unitarian Universalist Association bylaws. We cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope. We covenant to freely and compassionately share our faith, presence, and resources. Our generosity connects us to one another in relationships of interdependence and mutuality. Presence, gratitude, and hope. These are the essential practices of a generous spirit. We choose to be present to what is. We see it, we experience it, and we refrain from judging or trying to control things. Gratitude, we're grateful for what is. We appreciate the many blessings and the resources that help us survive the challenges we face. And we choose to hang on to hope. Not a fairy tale, happily ever after, everything will be okay kind of hope, but a commitment. Hope is a commitment, a promise we make to the world to act as if things will get better, even and maybe especially on the days when it feels like everything is falling apart. So these are some of the practices we'll reflect on together today. But first, I invite you to rise in body or spirit to join in singing meditation on breathing. Now, those of you who have sung this song before know that there are 3 parts. There's a drone, there's a melody, and there's a descant. You can stay on the drone. It's all one note, so it's very easy. You can stay on the melody. You can come in with the descant. Just do what feels good and right. So we start with the drone. Ready? Breathe in. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. Thank you.
As I mentioned, we're at the beginning of stewardship season. I'd like to invite Martha Schmidt forward to offer a testimonial about stewardship.
So I'm on the committee, George and Judy Lalonde and Reverend Elizabeth years, and at this time of year, we part of what we do is, and I'm the one who does it, I ask people if they will come and give a testimonial about why they pledge, but I also about what does the church mean to you? So that's what I'm going to do. I have been grounded, become a more peaceful, loving person as well. What we do matters. By repeatedly being told by Reverend Elizabeth at the end of every service, that's how I felt when I have come to church while she's been here. I feel like every Sunday she sends us home with the words, "You are loved and you are just fine the way you are." And for some reason, I have taken that in the last few years, and it has kind of made me free. So I can only assume that maybe that's what happens for you too when you come to church. And I know that we welcome everyone to come. For me, I have had a lot of fun being involved in the work of the church. I remember Margaret asking me probably 30 years ago, would I help with the pledge drive, which then involved a dinner up on this floor for everyone. And if you came to the dinner, you also, your table mates, it's just like going to a thing for festival dance. They ask you to write down your pledge. Well, we don't do that anymore. We've kind of streamlined everything we do, and we ask you to be more responsible. It's actually a lot of work deciding what you can afford to give to the church. You know, maybe some people have plenty of money. I would say my family has plenty of money. We didn't always have plenty of money, so 20 years ago we did have to talk about, we had to do the worksheet that we provide. We had to figure out what we could afford to give to the church. So why I pledge is because I want the church and the work of this church to keep going forward. Every Sunday when I see all those little children sitting on the floor, I am hopeful for the future and for the message that we impart to our children, that my children have taken that in and gone forth in the world. What we do here, I think, is very important, and I will be downstairs with chocolates.
Thank you so much, Martha. Great words. Now let's take a moment to engage in the practice of generosity together. For those of you able to make a financial contribution, the logistics are on your screen. We typically give away all of the cash from our Sunday offering to local charities whose missions align with our values, a program called the Month of Sundays. This month, the recipient is Inland Oasis, a volunteer organization providing support to the LGBTQ+ community through educational, social, and health programming, including the Westside Food Pantry, a community center, an emergency fund for those in immediate need, a youth support group, and social activities like drag bingo and game nights. To donate, please indicate Month of Sundays on your check or from the online drop-down menu. In the spirit of love and for the continuing work of this church, we will now take some time to practice generosity together.
Thank you. And now I'd like to invite forward the folks who are officially joining our membership today. In our tradition, it's significant that we welcome anyone and everyone who would like to be a part of this community. There's no test, no need to pre-qualify. If you want to be a part of what we're creating together, you can be. When we know that this is our spiritual home, the place where we belong, some of us choose to officially join. People take many different paths to becoming members of this church. Some join quite quickly after they arrive, and others participate as friends for months or even years before deciding to join. Sometimes past members return and rejoin. Joining this congregation signals a commitment to being on a spiritual journey that goes beneath the surfaces of life and a desire to share that journey with others. So we've got the people who are joining today forward. I'd also like to invite forward Dwayne DeTemple, representing the Board of Trustees, and Elizabeth Berlinger, the chair of our membership committee. Now, new members, to join, all you have to do is sign our membership book, and then we have some gifts for you. And while you are signing, I will introduce you to the congregation. So this is Christine Souquet. Christine was born in Burgundy, France, the day the Germans entered Paris in World War II. She was raised in Paris with her 6 siblings, After graduating with a bachelor's degree in biology and biochemistry, she worked in clinical labs while pursuing a master's in immunology. She immigrated to the U.S. in 1965 and lived in San Francisco for 15 years, where she met both of her husbands. She became a U.S. citizen in 1974 and maintains dual citizenship. Her 3 children were born in the Bay Area, and Christine worked at the University of California, San Francisco, UCSF, in research until her family moved to Moscow in 1980. She then worked at WSU doing research in immunology and biochemistry until she retired in 2007. Christine has 13 grandchildren, and she lost her husband in 2020 after a long battle with cancer. Christine, I'm so glad you've joined us. And this is Dana and Linda Dolson. Dana moved to Moscow in 1987 from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, after graduating with an MS in forestry from the University of Alberta. From 1982 to 2013, he worked for Alberta Fisheries, Alberta Protected Areas, and the University of Idaho NPS Cooperative Park Studies Unit, Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks, and Utah Wildlife Resources as a social scientist and planner in natural resources management. Dana is now retired. Linda is a University of Idaho alumna, formerly employed by WSU Bookie, a bridal consultant at the Bon Marché and Weight Watchers. Linda was a caring and devoted daughter to her late parents, Lois and Robert Leonard, MD. Dana met Linda at, and then were later married in, the United Church of Moscow in 1988. They each have children from their first marriages. Linda has Nathan, Carl, and Kara, and Dana has Sasha, as well as 2 daughters together, Dana and Alana. Between them both, they have 4 granddaughters, Bree, Tessa, Penelope, and Zoe, and 3 grandsons, Richard, Luca, and Milo. Last August, Linda and Dana celebrated 35 years together. So welcome. We're so glad you joined us. Let's give them a round of applause. And now we'll covenant with these new members. The words will be up on the screen. And you start.
You have accepted the responsibility of membership. You have found that you resonate with the ideals of Unitarian Universalism and that you want to commit to these ideals and live them.
The responsibility of becoming a member is a lifetime process. We are glad that you chose to be one with us. May you find the years ahead to be filled with the hope and vision that your membership promises.
May you find here both sustenance and fodder for growth. May you share your thoughts and your stories that the community might be enriched by the unique wisdom you carry. Congregation, we celebrate your membership as fellow seekers and companions on our spiritual journey. With you, we pledge to listen deeply and to respond with open hearts and minds. We welcome your full participation in our community. And then our new members. And together we pledge to embody our Unitarian Universalist principles in our everyday lives, blessed by the freedom that encourages us to live with authenticity and integrity, and secure in the knowledge that we are members of a faith community that helps us to live our highest ideals. We commit to act on our belief that all are worthy and all are welcome. Amen. Thank you very much. I am not really a soprano. Just saying. Today comes from the Global Leadership Foundation. Joyously and willingly and without expectation of receiving anything in return. Generosity of spirit is created through respect and compassion for others. It involves experiencing and celebrating that which is important to another person. Share in this way, we generate abundance and increase prosperity for all. This helps us make a difference and transform situations, generate creative and innovative solutions. Lead by example, strengthen our acceptance of wisdom and knowledge for everyone's benefit, explore and build connecting threads where there were none before, and foster peace and harmony. And we can celebrate all that. Paradoxically, while being generous in spirit means not expecting anything in return, it yields more to us than we could ever imagine. What we've given will come back to us in ways we may never have expected. So you know that old Bible story about the loaves and the fishes? It's in the book of John. Jesus asks the disciples to feed a large crowd, and they tell him it would be impossible. But then a boy offers up 5 small loaves of bread and 2 small fish, and Jesus uses them to feed all 5,000 people. Now, one way to understand this story would be to ascribe magical and miraculous abilities to Jesus. Another would be to turn it into a sci-fi fanfic and put a replicator in his pocket. But the way I like to understand it, seeing the one boy offer up the contents of his lunch sack to share, the family next to him reached into their bag and found a bag of apricots and a hunk of cheese, and the woman next to them cut the apple in her pocket into pieces so she could share it, and the woman and the family next to them pulled out dried meat and some pistachios, and it rippled out like a wave. Folks offered up everything that they had in their pockets, the bread, the snacks, the sustenance, until it became a giant potluck with plenty of food for everyone. Now, we find stories like this all over the place across traditions, from stone soup to stregonona with her magic pasta pot. They're teaching stories, and they're meant to pull us out of our own heads and into relationship, into community, and a sense of shared responsibility. They invite us to embrace a sense of abundance rather than scarcity, to respond to life, each other, and our very own selves with a generous spirit. Now, as I said earlier, some key practices that help us cultivate a generous spirit are presence, gratitude, and hope. All 3 are simple concepts to understand, but they're not necessarily easy to live out. In some ways, our biology works against us. So take presence. To practice presence, we quiet the internal monologue. We pay attention to whomever we are with or whatever is happening around us. We keep our hearts open, offering profound respect or even reverence to what we're witnessing. We keep our minds open, ready to observe and learn rather than judge or fix. We stay in the now rather than acting out of old wounds or inventing future problems. So it sounds simple, but why is it so hard? Because we evolved to be on edge. Early hominids who were chronically anxious constantly scanned their environment for potential threats. They had a significant survival advantage. And those who responded to threats by shutting down those open minds and hearts and relying on their instinctual behaviors were the ones who were more likely to get away, survive, reproduce, and pass along their genes. So gratitude, again, the concept is simple. We give thanks for what we have. We move through the world with a sense of awe and wonder. Study after study after study confirms that practicing gratitude increases our sense of inner peace and happiness. So why is it so hard to hang on to that grateful mindset? Because we evolved as tribal omnivores. Sharing and looking out for each other was a beneficial survival strategy, but only in the tribal group. Successful tribes were the ones that hoarded their resources and or aggressively stole resources from other tribes. When it comes to actively practicing hope, remember Joanna Macy's 3 steps. Take a clear view of reality, Identify what you hope for in terms of the direction you'd like things to move in, or the values you'd like to see expressed, and take steps to move ourselves or our situation in that direction. So it sounds simple, it sounds easy. Only getting a clear view of reality is almost impossible in these times of expanding complexity and dueling worldviews. It's hard to see a way forward, never mind find an effective way of moving things in the right direction. So I think it is normal and natural, and maybe just a consequence of our biology, to sometimes want to abandon this whole messy world and go and live off-grid in the woods and raise goats. Or whatever your fantasy of isolated self-sufficiency looks like. I'm not the only one who has one, am I? And that is why I need this faith community. Because every day you remind me that we are a people of generosity. We don't just look out for ourselves and our tribe. We offer what we have and do what we can. And we learn again and again together that when we are generous, we get more than we give in ways we couldn't have imagined. So I was sitting in our fellowship hall last Wednesday, eating delicious food, having lovely conversations, when I heard about the gas outage. My first reaction was anxious. Do I have gas heat? Do I have gas hot water? Probably. I don't really know. Oh my gosh, where am I going to shower? What do I need to do to keep the house warm? How do I keep my family safe? Do I need to leave this dinner right now and go and grab a space heater before everybody else gets them? And then Archie George piped up and said, I have extra heaters. If you need them, I'll bring them by your house. And then Ginger started talking about, well, we really should open the church building. Krista Kramer told me that I should call disaster management department first thing in the morning, which I did. The three of them reminded me who we are, and I was able to pivot from that anxious, self-focused place back to generosity and compassion. And that is why this place became the designated center for community support during the gas outage. We provided a warm place, hot showers, space heaters, and a ton of food to people who needed those things. It was amazing to watch. We mobilized quickly and relatively effectively, although it was a little stressful. Sometimes it felt like building the plane while we were flying it. But we're already thinking about how to do better in the future. And while we aren't and weren't looking for accolades or new members, now that the gas is restored, we have a whole range of new community partners and people liking and following our church on social media. And that's what our reading lifted up. While being generous in spirit means not expecting anything in return, it yields more to us than we could ever imagine. What we've given will come back to us in ways we may never have expected. And I think that's what's happening now. Cultivating a generous spirit means responding to challenges and trauma by grounding and centering, and then not asking, what do I need, but what do I have to offer? How can I help? Our answers to those questions vary depending on our resources, both material and personal. I don't believe that self-sacrifice is generosity. Nor are there right or wrong answers. We simply need to hold the questions as we move through difficult times. When it comes to interpersonal relationships, cultivating a generous spirit looks like always giving others the benefit of the doubt. As humans, we tend to create stories about other people's motivations. We give them backstories. We lose sight of the deep truth that every human's experiences are unique and shaped by their culture and education, by old wounds, and this leads to judgment, disdain, dehumanization, sometimes even hate. In Rising Strong, Brene Brown shares a story of personal growth in a chapter called Sewer Rats and Scofflaws. In it, she describes a trip where she was guilt-tripped into speaking at a conference for free and then forced to share a room with a woman who, among myriad other transgressions, smeared the icing from a cinnamon bun all over the hotel couch. Brown was infuriated. And she came home and was venting to her therapist about the situation, and a therapist asked her if she believed the roommate was doing the best she could. Brene immediately answered, "No, she's a sewer rat." But then she took a step back and tackled the situation like the researcher she is. She asked a bevy of other people what they thought. And the people that she had already identified as being wholehearted or shame-resistant all answered yes, this woman was probably doing the best she could. Brene did not like this answer. And she wrestled with her own no until she got a window into what it felt like to be on the other side of that judgment, being judged rather than being the one judging. At which point, she started to work on embracing a more generous stance. She gives the last word in the chapter to her husband, who says simply, "My life is easier when I assume everyone's doing the best they can." When we make this shift, it opens space in our relationships, especially the difficult ones. Rather than choosing sides or pontificating, practicing generosity can look like listening, accepting, and eventually finding those points of connection and compassion. This is why generosity weaves us together in relationships of interdependence. That said, on some days, the person most in need of generosity of spirit is myself. I've historically found it easier to extend compassion to others than to stop the harsh and critical self-talk that winds up feeling almost abusive. I've been working on cultivating self-compassion for a while now. You've heard about it before. The first trick that helped me was to make a rule that I wasn't allowed to say anything to myself that I wouldn't say to someone else in a similar situation. It took a while before I stopped, it took a while to stop breaking that rule. It was a hard rule for me to follow. I'd think something mean, I'd catch myself, I'd take a deep breath, and I'd start over. And over time, I started to shift and embrace my own inherent worth and dignity with as much fierceness as I've always insisted on embracing others. But stopping the abusive self-talk wasn't enough. I was still hardwired with patterns of self-sacrifice and a moderate-sized martyr complex that sometimes masqueraded as a hero complex. I actually credit my autoimmune disease with teaching me to respect my own limits, protecting my health and energy, and prioritizing the support systems and the practices that allow for my general well-being. I don't have a choice now. The disease's strategy is simple. If I push past my own limits, it takes me down, and it takes me down hard. Embracing enoughness has been another important spiritual practice. This is a choice to believe that what we can do with ease and grace will be enough. And it's not just everyone else who's doing the best they can. Each of us is too. And we can tell ourselves over and over again that our best is good enough. Our best is good enough. And the miracle is that it is. Actually, it's usually more than enough. Just as bringing a generous spirit to the world brings an abundance of good and unexpected gifts, so does the work of bringing that same generous spirit to ourselves. When I'm able to get out of my own way, the goodness I have to offer flows more freely and has a greater impact. So if we commit to these 3 simple practices, presence, gratitude, and hope, we can gradually shift our habits and patterns away from those anxious, scarcity-based, guarded ways of being human that our biology predisposes us toward and that our culture reinforces. Now, why does our culture reinforce it? Because scared and anxious people are easier to manipulate. We get hooked by the lures of consumer culture, or worse, we turn against one another and wind up isolated and vulnerable. By contrast, presence, gratitude, hope lead us into relationship, into interdependence and kindness. We become more differentiated, gaining clarity about who we are and what we can and can't do. We build resilience, both individually and as a community. Cultivating a generous spirit feels like softening, it feels like opening, it feels like trusting myself and others and the fundamental goodness of life. It feels like lowering defensives and leading with love. It feels good. So may we cultivate generosity in our own spirits. May we support and encourage generous spirits in one another. And in doing so, may we build beloved community and do our part to help heal this broken world. So be it, and so may it be. I invite you now to rise in body or in spirit. We're going to sing Spirit Says Do, number 1024. This is a zipper song, so it's the same all the time, and then you just change out one word. You'll get the hang of it. It's not hard. Our closing reading is In the End, It Won't Matter, and it's short, so if you don't want to go up and down, you can stay standing. In the end, it won't matter how much we have, but how generously we have given. It won't matter how much we know, but rather how well we live. And it won't matter how much we believe, but how deeply we love. Please join now in our sung benediction, There is a Love.
Holding me, there
Please say with me now the words to extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this chalice. May Sarton has said, help us to be ever faithful gardeners of the Spirit, who know that without darkness nothing comes to birth, and without light nothing flowers. Beloveds, you are enough. You are so generous. Go forth and love extravagantly, for you are extravagantly loved in return. Go in peace. Come back next Sunday.